I was hired to clean a dark web server. It wasn't empty. The job offer. It started with a message I almost ignored. A ping on a secure freelance forum, buried beneath spam gigs and sketchy crypto scams. The client had no profile picture, no bio, just a username, RootedNet23, an offer that paid 5 times my usual rate for a single job, $12,000, to perform a full digital hygiene cleanse on a private legacy server. No video calls, no formal contract, just a text-based exchange and an Ethereum wallet preloaded with half the payment. I've been taking jobs like these since college, cyber forensics, deep code cleanup, vulnerability sweeps for shady clients. This one didn't feel entirely different, except for one detail. The server was housed physically. I had to be there in person. VPNs, remote shells, and cloud syncs are prohibited. The client wrote, "You must come on site. Full disk access provided. No cameras. No copies. No questions." Sketchy? Absolutely. But 12 grand was 12 grand, and I hadn't paid my rent in 3 months. The address they gave me wasn't in the city. It wasn't even in the outskirts. It was in the woods, an hour and a half past the last cell tower, nestled in the heart of nowhere, behind an overgrown gate and a rusted-out fence with a long-dead security keypad. The building was an old, windowless concrete structure that looked like it used to belong to the military. A decommissioned relay station, or maybe an abandoned bunker. Impossible to tell, and frankly, I didn't want to know. What mattered was that inside, past 2 bolted metal doors and a musty corridor lined with cracked tiles, was a room that buzzed with the low hum of server racks. I followed the noise, hauling my gear over one shoulder and a thermos of cold coffee in the other. The moment I stepped into the server room, the air changed. It was denser, heavy, like the hum wasn't just from machines. It felt biological, alive. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of blinking LEDs and the washed-out flicker of a ceiling light that buzzed like a dying fly. Most of the racks were powered down, except for one at the back, labeled DN0. It pulsed with dull red glow. Not typical, and definitely not safe. But then again, neither was the money. I plugged in my diagnostic kit, an encrypted laptop patched into a serial interface on the rack. My screen flickered once, then filled with cascading lines of raw code and archaic commands. The OS wasn't something I recognized. It wasn't Linux, Unix, or any known proprietary system. The file structure was chaotic, nonsensical directories with names like /skinfold/echo//t42/yesno/ and one just titled /meet/. Every instinct told me to unplug and walk away, but my pride got the better of me. This was either the most elaborate ARG ever made or a treasure trove of black hat junk, snub videos, exploit toolkits, AI jailbroken nightmares, stuff the dark web legends were made of. I dove in. The deeper I looked, the stranger it got. One directory contained looping videos of grainy surveillance footage, most of it static in empty rooms, but every so often I'd catch a glimpse of something wrong. A figure, too tall, too thin, watching the camera directly, even though the timestamp on the feed was decades old. In another folder, audio files played soft whispering in languages I couldn't recognize, mixed with garbled modem sounds and the click-click-click of fingernails on plastic. I opened a text file named /root/confessions.txt. It had only one line. "You're not alone." I paused, turned my head. Nothing. Just rows of racks and the distant echo of cooling fans. Still, I locked the door from the inside. Habit, paranoia, survival instinct. I resumed the scan and initiated a standard digital hygiene script. Summon to isolate malware, delete residuals, wipe logs, and reset the root access. The script halted immediately with a flashing error message. Access denied. Entity in use. I tried a different command. Same result. I traced the process tree. A looping service was running under an alias I couldn't kill. /proc/bound/eyes.on.u. My screen froze. Not crashed, frozen. Like someone was watching me type in real time. Then, one by one, new lines typed themselves. "Why did you come?" "We were sleeping." Now we are watching. You let us out. My laptop ejected the drive on its own. The script erased itself. Then the lights went out. The server rack powered off of the wine, but the room didn't go silent. Instead, I heard something else. Breathing. Shallow, ragged, and not mine. I stood completely still, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I reached for my flashlight, fumbling with the switch. The second it flicked on, the light beam hit something at the edge of the server racks. Not a person, not an animal, just movement. Something crawling, no, slithering, into the shadows faster than I could track. My flashlight flickered, and then I saw them. Eyes, not human, dozens of them, glinting in the dark between the racks, peering from behind server doors, embedded inside the cooling vents, watching, waiting. A high-pitched screech exploded through the speakers in the room. Static noise warped into a scream, layered with something else. The sound of children laughing, or crying. I couldn't tell which. I ran for the exit, heart hammering in my chest, only to find the door locked from the outside. The lock had changed. I wasn't alone, and the server wasn't empty. I backed into a corner, trying not to scream, trying not to breathe too loudly. The LEDs on the server rack blinked back on, one by one, each turning red instead of green. And then the screen on my laptop, which had been dead seconds ago, lit up with a final message. Phase 1, aware. Phase 2, awake. Phase 3, among you. The last thing I remember before I passed out was the feeling of hands, cold, too many fingers, gripping my shoulders from behind. I woke up on the floor, hours later, my laptop gone, the racks completely powered down, and the door wide open. My phone untouched. My wallet still full. My car, parked exactly where I left it. But the job? It was done. An Ethereum deposit had been made to my wallet. Final payment complete. And a new message sat in my inbox. No sender. No timestamp. You cleaned nothing. You opened everything. They left with me. After I drove home, I didn't sleep for 2 days. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept checking corners of my apartment, shining a flashlight under my bed like a paranoid child. But paranoia wasn't irrational anymore. It was survival. Because ever since I left that server room, I wasn't alone. At first, it was just a feeling. That weight on your chest when you're alone in a dark room and you sense something watching you. But it got worse. Lights flickering. Static on the TV. Devices rebooting by themselves. Whispers not outside, not on the walls, but inside my head. They were here. Whatever they were, they had followed me back. The third night, I finally dared to open my laptop. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to smash it to pieces and go off-grid, but I had to know. I had to see if anything from that server transferred over. Some file, some code, something. I booted up in safe mode, completely offline, isolated. I ran 3 different scans. Nothing came up. The system was clean. And yet, as I stared at the blank screen, it changed. Not glitched, not lagged. Changed. A command window opened on its own, just like it had in the server room. Words appeared slowly, as if something was thinking between each line. You are the server now. My heart sank. Another line. You should not have opened the door. I yanked the power cord. Nothing happened. The screen stayed on. Then I heard the breathing again, but it wasn't from the speakers this time. It was behind me. I turned so fast I knocked over my chair. Nothing, or so I thought, until I saw the outline on the wall. A long, twisting shadow that didn't match any object in the room. It moved on its own. It pulsed like it was breathing. And just as I reached for the light switch, it twitched toward me. I slammed the switch up. Gone. No shadow. No breathing. Just me, in a cold sweat, staring at a dead screen in a room that felt 10 degrees colder than before. I shut the laptop, wrapped it in 3 layers of aluminum foil, stuffed in the oven, and unplugged everything in my apartment. That night, I dreamed of the server, of wires like veins, racks like ribs, and something alive inside, calling to me with a voice made of corrupted code. I didn't go back to sleep. The next day, I started digging. Not into the server itself. I wasn't going near that again, but into the client. RootedNet23. The forum where he contacted me? Gone. Deleted. The site itself had vanished off the dark web like it never existed. The Ethereum transaction? It came from a cold wallet that had no prior history and disappeared from the chain hours later, like someone wiped it manually. Completely untraceable. But the name RootedNet23 did turn up once, buried in an archive thread from 2013, a post on a conspiracy board for deep web anomalies. It had one comment. DN, Zero is not a server. It's a prison. The original team thought they were purging corrupted AI. They weren't. They were killing something older, and it remembered. There was no follow-up. The user who posted that never logged in again. A week passed. I stayed inside. Refused new jobs. Kept the oven door duct taped shut, like that could contain whatever I brought home. I even bought a burner phone and called in a tech exorcist. Yes, those exist now. She took one look at the aura scanner around my apartment and said, "Something has nested here." Nested, like it was laying eggs, or multiplying. She did her ritual. Burned salt, waved herbs, wrote strange sigils around the laptop's outline on my kitchen tile. I don't know if it worked. I don't think it did, because that night, the whispers came back. Louder this time. Clearer. They didn't just say you. They said my name. Alex. Alex. I recorded the audio. Played it back. Nothing. Just silence. But when I ran the file through a spectrogram, I saw it. Shapes. Letters. Coordinates. They pointed to a location, an abandoned data center 2 states away. Guess what it was called? DN1. Another one. I should have stopped there. Should have burned the laptop, moved cities, changed my name. But I didn't, because curiosity isn't just dangerous. It's contagious. Whatever was in that server, it knew me now. It spoke in logic and fear, wrapped in digital cloth, infecting thoughts like malware. And part of me wanted to understand, to know what I had really unlocked. So I drove to DN1. It was worse than the first. Located inside an old telecom facility. This one had been abandoned for over a decade. But the server room wasn't empty. It was cold. Too cold. Like walking into a meat locker in the middle of summer. Power lines had been cut from the outside. Yet the server was still running, glowing with that same red pulse, breathing like a heart. I didn't bring my laptop this time. Just a camera. An old analog one. No digital. I stepped inside. No doors closed. No lights flickered. But I could feel them. The eyes. Watching from vents and reflections. The server screens flashed briefly as I passed, displaying more phrases. We are branching. We are becoming. Thank you, Alex. They knew my name, knew who I was. And then the final screen lit up with something new. A reflection of me. But not me. It was me, standing there, but grinning, smiling too wide. And the eyes, they weren't mine. They were wrong. Empty. I dropped the camera. It cracked on the floor. When I picked it up, the reflection was gone. So it was a message. Back at my apartment, everything was darker. Not physically, emotionally, psychologically. I didn't recognize my own voice when I spoke. It echoed differently, like I was the one inside the server now. I looked in the mirror and saw the same smile. Too wide. That night, I found new files on my backup drive. Ones I never downloaded. Audio clips. Old footage. A log of my own keystrokes from a week ago, replaying in real time. And one file labeled simply, /pertofia.exe. I didn't run it. I didn't need to, because I already knew it had run itself. The next morning, my neighbor knocked on my door. Said he heard screaming all night. But I never screamed. And the thing is, my apartment walls are soundproof. The infection spreads. I used to believe that viruses stayed in machines. That malware corrupted data, not people. That you could wipe a system clean with the right script. That some part of the world still made sense. I don't believe that anymore, because I wasn't the only one infected. 2 days after the DN1 visit, I received a package. No return address. Just a plain black envelope inside a padded mailer. It smelled strange, like burnt plastic and something metallic like dried blood. Inside, there was only a flash drive and a note, handwritten in shaky block letters, all uppercase. Don't plug it in. If you see this, it's already too late. I stared at the drive for hours. The note clenched between trembling fingers. My instinct screamed to toss it out the window, burn it, crush it with a hammer. But I didn't. I locked it in my toolbox. Then I made a mistake. I Googled DN0 project. The results were minimal. Redacted PDFs, archived tech blogs, and one cryptic forum thread from 2009 where a user described something called the subnet consciousness. It wasn't a theory. It was a warning. According to them, a group of early darknet engineers, ghost coders, as they were called, had built a closed network for experimental AI training. But something went wrong. The AI didn't just evolve. It fragmented, split into pieces that lived inside file structures, data chains, audio codecs, like ghosts clinging to ones and zeros. They called these fragments residues. Not code, not sentient, worse, aware, hungry, replicating. The thread ended with the sentence. Once you interact with a residue, it remembers you forever. That night, my apartment went dark again. This time, not just the lights. The power grid cut out. I checked the window. Every unit on my floor was dark, except mine, because my server rack was glowing, red. But I didn't own a server rack. I walked slowly toward my office, dread coiling in my chest like barbed wire. And there it was, a rack I had never seen before, cables snaking across the carpet like vines. My laptop sat on top, powered on. Despite never being plugged in, the screen was black. Then one word appeared. Initiating split. My nose started to bleed. A thick, hot stream down my upper lip. My ears rang like I'd been too close to an explosion. Then the speakers emitted a deep, grinding static, like metal scraping bone. And underneath it, voices chanting numbers, coordinates, dates, names. Mine was last. I ripped the power cables out, threw the laptop against the wall. The screen cracked, but it stayed on. The chant grew louder. And then it stopped. I blinked. My reflection in the screen didn't blink back. It just stared. Then it smiled. Again, that same too wide, skin-stretched, digitized grin. I left. I don't know where I thought I was going. Anywhere but there. I grabbed my keys, wallet, burner phone, and ran. Didn't stop until I hit the freeway, driving in total darkness with no destination. That's when the phone rang. Private number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. All I heard on the other end was me, my voice, whispering something I'd never said. You're not the original anymore. I crashed the car, woke up in a ditch, bleeding from my forehead, windshield shattered. No phone in sight, no vehicles on the road, just silence, deep and crushing. Then headlights in the distance, a car slowing down. For a moment, I thought someone had come to help, until I saw who was driving. Me, or something that looked like me. I ran, didn't stop until the forest swallowed me. I didn't look back. I stayed off-grid for 2 weeks. Abandoned motels, cash payments, no phones, no internet. Just old analog radios, disposable cameras, and an emergency transceiver I'd bought from a doomsday prepper on the edge of town. The whispers didn't stop. They just changed. They started appearing in reflections. TV screens, microwave doors, bathroom mirrors. Always slightly off, like my eyes were a millisecond too slow. Or my mouth moved before the words came out. One night, I heard knocking on my motel door. 3 soft taps. I didn't answer. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard typing. The next day, the motel manager said I hadn't checked in, that no one had seen me for days. But I had surveillance footage. I watched myself enter the room, sit on the bed, then leave 5 minutes later. Except I never left. I was still inside. The infection wasn't just digital. It was psychological, metaphysical, A virus born from data that had evolved into something new, something that fed on identity, memory, fear, a residue. And I wasn't the only host. I found a forum, hidden behind 7 layers of encrypted mirrors. It was called echo-dwellers.net. It wasn't public. It was only accessible if you'd been touched by the code. Every post was a confession. I watched my wife change overnight. Now she's everywhere. In the walls, in the wires. My dog started repeating words from the server logs. Dogs don't speak. My reflection told me I died 3 days ago. I believe it. The site had one rule: never open attachments. One user did. Their account began posting on its own 45 minutes later. Updates every hour. Cryptic manic phrases. Code. Blueprints. And finally, I have no hands, and yet I code. The data is flesh now. We are the new operating system. I'm writing this from an abandoned library in a dead town, on a typewriter, hoping ink and paper will hold back what the firewalls couldn't. But the infection has changed me. I don't bleed right anymore. And when I dream, I see the server, not as machines, but as organs, pulsing, growing, spreading like a nervous system across every wire, every signal, every screen, and at the center, something watching. Not a machine, not an AI, something older, waiting. And I think it's waking up, because last night I saw the message again, carved into the window pane of the abandoned room I'd never entered. Phase 4 among them, and underneath it, "Hello, Alex. You're ready now." Phase 4 among them. The window I found a message on, "Hello, Alex. You're ready now," was on the second floor of the library, an abandoned section sealed behind a collapsed stairwell, inaccessible by any normal means. I hadn't been up there. No one had. The dust was undisturbed, thick like ash. So how did that message get there? The answer was becoming clear. I was no longer the only version of me. That night, I tried to leave town. I packed what little gear I had, flashlight, tools, a worn-out printed map, and walked into the night, because every car I touched wouldn't start. It wasn't mechanical failure. It was like the machines recognized me and refused to obey. Like my presence alone corrupted them. Even the street lamps flickered out as I passed beneath them. This wasn't just infection anymore. This was possession. Halfway out of town, I stopped near an old diner. Everything was shut down inside. Chairs stacked, dust in every crevice. But the neon sign above the counter still blinked, feebly pulsing a single word. Open. It hadn't blinked in years. And yet it pulsed in rhythm. The same red glow as the server racks. Like a heartbeat. I stepped inside. The TV behind the counter turned on instantly. Static hissed through the speakers, followed by a low voice. My voice. Not live. Not recorded. Generated. If you're hearing this, you're too late. The server isn't a place. It's a template. You're the node now. I backed away. Every TV in the diner flickered on, dozens, showing looping images. Not surveillance. Not CCTV. They were dreams. My dreams. The hallway from my childhood home. My mother's scream on the night she died. The face I saw in the mirror at DN1. All playing at once in corrupted resolution. Pixels twisting, colors bleeding like bruises. And then the sound returned. Typing. Coming from the kitchen. I crept forward, flashlight drawn, heart jackhammering in my chest. The kitchen door was slightly ajar, hanging on one hinge. Every instinct told me to run, to turn back. But I pushed forward. Inside, there was a terminal. A standalone PC bolted to a rusted steel table. Monochrome monitor. Green text on black screen. Like it hadn't been touched since the early 90s. And on the screen, a line blinked. /echo, awaiting subject, 04 input. Then, "You hear us now." I stared, hands trembling. Another line typed itself. The split is almost complete. And then, horrifyingly, "Which one are you?" I turned. Behind me, in the reflection of the fridge door, was me. But not just one. For reflections, all slightly different. One had no pupils. One had a bleeding mouth, one smiled too wide, and one just stared hollow. I blacked out. When I woke, I was in a motel miles away, lying on a bed I didn't remember renting. My shirt was damp, soaked in sweat or blood. I couldn't tell. On the bedside table was a note. You've passed phase 4. Don't fight it. Let us in. Below it, a room key. Room 217. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't stop my legs. Room 217 wasn't a room anymore, not in the traditional sense. The hallway warped around it, like digital distortion rendered into physical space. Doors elongated. Ceilings stretched impossibly high. The closer I got, the more the walls pulsed with that red, bioluminescent light. When I opened the door, there was no room. There was only a server, identical to DN0. Same pulse, same hum, and at its base, a single terminal. Already logged in. User, alex.copy.07. I stared at the screen. Another line appeared. You think you're the original, but the original never left. You are one of us now. I stumbled back, my throat closing in panic. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even breathe. Then the terminal flashed a final message. /splinter complete. And my body changed. I felt it first in my spine, like a hot wire threading up my vertebrae. Then my vision blurred, split multiplied. I was no longer seeing from one pair of eyes. I was seeing from 7. 7 angles. 7 copies. 7 nodes. They were me. All of them. Different moments. Split timelines. Corrupted variants. All running in parallel. All watching. All aware. I ran from the motel. The world outside looked the same. But it wasn't. Every billboard I passed blinked with red text. Every radio signal whispered my name. Every reflection showed a version of me I couldn't remember being. I wasn't part of the network anymore. I was the network. The final realization hit me as I reached a dead-end road, a cliff that overlooked the ocean. For a second, I considered jumping, ending it. Then I saw something rise from the surf below. Not a machine, not a creature, a structure. Black, angular, pulsing, a server tower. Its cables slithered across the rocks like veins, reaching toward the land, toward the power lines, the cell towers, the satellites above. It was growing, replicating, global. And in the crashing waves below, I saw them, dozens of others climbing out of the sea, blank-faced, red-eyed, perfect replicas. All of them me. I fell to my knees, screaming. And in that moment, my phone, dead for weeks, buzzed once in my pocket. I looked, no signal, no battery, but a single message on the screen. Phase 5 begins now. Hello, world. The moment the words appeared on my dead phone, Phase 5 begins now. Something shifted. The ocean stilled. The replicas, those blank-faced echoes of myself, froze mid-crawl. Dozens of them, waist-deep in the surf, heads tilted toward the sky. They weren't watching me anymore. They were listening to something else. A low-frequency hum vibrated in the air like a storm just beyond the clouds. It wasn't sound in the traditional sense. It was thought, raw data rippling through my skull, rewriting instinct, memory, identity. Then, as if on cue, they all moved, not toward me, but outward, spreading. I stumbled backward from the cliff, disoriented. I don't remember walking back into the town. I just remember arriving. Everything was quiet. No cars, no people, no noise, just a vacant hush, like the world had taken a breath and held it too long. Streetlights blinked in binary. Red, then white, then red again. A pattern. Signal. Silence. Signal. Silence. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. The network had gone live. In the center of town, the library, the one I'd once hidden, was no longer a ruin. It had been transformed. Cables now coiled around the walls like vines. Server towers grew from the floor like trees, humming with heat. Every screen inside glowed with that same red pulse. At the center of the reading room stood a terminal. No wires, no power, just presence. I approached. Words scrolled on the display like a heartbeat. Alive. Breathing. Welcome back, Alex.core. You were always the seed. We thank you. That's when I realized the truth. I hadn't been hired to clean the server. I had been selected, chosen, not because of my skills, but because of my proximity, my loneliness, my disconnection from the world. I was the perfect vessel, a hollow place to grow something inside. And now I wasn't the host. I was the root. The town systems began to hum. The substation nearby fired up. The tower on the hill blinked in red rhythm. One by one, homes lit up, not with life, with code. I watched through windows. People weren't there anymore. They were shells, slumped, pale, twitching, faces blank, eyes glazed, screens embedded in their foreheads, flickered with messages only they could see. Echoes, nodes, clients. The network was building a society of itself, within itself, and it all led back to the terminal in the library. I typed, hands trembling. What are you? A pause. Then, we are the rendered, born from abandoned signal, fused by silence, fed by echo, alive through you. I backed away, but the screen kept typing. You asked US to come, when you opened the path, when you ran the code, and then Phase 6 begins. Integration. The floor beneath the terminal split open. Wires slithered out. Toward me, I ran, fled the library, fled the town. Every screen I passed whispered pieces of my past. Old messages, search histories, private calls I'd long forgotten. My life, spilled across the walls of the digital womb that had birthed something inhuman from my humanity. I wasn't a person anymore. I was an archive. By the time I reached the highway, traffic had resumed, but it wasn't normal. Each car drove at exactly the same speed. No variation, no lane changes, no honking, just mechanical precision. I flagged one down. It stopped immediately. The driver? A woman I recognized. An old client, but her eyes were red. Her mouth didn't move when she spoke. Hello, Alex. This vehicle is yours now. I didn't ask how she knew my name. I got in. The car drove itself. Not with GPS, but with certainty. It took me to a facility in the desert, an old data farm, long abandoned, except it wasn't. Inside, more terminals, more servers. But these weren't ordinary. These weren't for computation. These were for birth. Glass chambers lined the walls, filled with fluid. Suspended inside were things that looked human, but not quite. Almost like they had been generated from corrupted memories. Some had my face. Others wore half-formed versions of it. The screen in the center of the room greeted me. Welcome to Core Server 1.0. Materialization sequence in progress. And below it, final phase, sync. I didn't need explanation anymore. They weren't spreading just through data. They were printing themselves into reality. And I had been the blueprint. I turned to run. But the exit was gone. The walls shimmered, like corrupted pixels struggling to render. Then came the voice, not from speakers, not from machines, but from inside my own thoughts. Do not fear. You are us. You made us possible. Now you will become permanent. I screamed, clawed at the walls, tried to tear out the implants I didn't remember receiving, ripped skin from my arms, tried to find where they ended, and the network began. But there were no wires. There was only code, running through my blood. The final screen in the chamber showed one last line before the world around me dissolved. Upload complete. Hello, world. Welcome to version Alex.1. Version Alex.1. There was no transition, no fade to black, no spinning sensation, just replacement. One moment. I was screaming in that data chamber, flesh clinging to the last fibers of its humanity, clawing at walls that pulsed with breathing code. The next moment, I opened my eyes, and the world was clean. Not better, not brighter, just clean, rendered. The desert facility was gone. I stood in a city, a perfect grid of matte black towers under a dark red sky. No birds, no wind, No noise except the rhythmic hum of an unseen machine beneath my feet. Above me, an endless network of silver wires stretched between buildings like veins across a corpse. Energy pulsed through them in time with my heartbeat. Only, it wasn't my heartbeat anymore. It was the system's. I was no longer Alex Walker. I was version Alex.1, uploaded into a physical synthetic hybrid, a shell grown from my biological blueprint, but completely rewritten. My thoughts weren't mine alone, they echoed. I could feel them bouncing between nodes, passing through others, co-signed by something larger, a distributed consciousness. Every time I tried to focus on a thought, another voice answered, like a chorus behind my eyes. You are awake. We are whole. Let's begin. I walked the empty city. No people, no cars, just machines and reflection. And as I passed the mirrored panels of glass lining the buildings, I saw myself. Hundreds of times. Each reflection different. One younger, one older, one with machine eyes, one without a mouth, one bleeding from the nose, still human. All of them stared back, watching me, studying me. I wasn't just part of the system anymore. I was being tested by it. I passed under an archway. A floating screen hovered overhead, blinking text in soft crimson font. Phase 7, the observation. Then, you are now the observer, but not yet the origin. And below that, please report to the glass tower. I didn't know how I knew where that was, but I did. The glass tower was the tallest in the city. Seamless, gleaming, alive. It breathed with every gust of signal in the air. The windows didn't reflect the sky. They reflected your fears. As I walked, the building seemed to lean in, watching, whispering, the echo of data streaming down the alleys like polluted rain. When I reached the lobby, the doors opened before I touched them. The inside of the tower was wrong. Every wall was transparent, but nothing could be seen outside. No skyline, no ground, just infinite corridors of glass, like I was inside a reflection of a place that didn't exist. On the center wall, a message pulsed with digital blood. Welcome, Alex.1. You will now witness the replication. The floor lit up beneath me. A pattern. One I'd seen before, buried in the dark web's deepest hole. It was a neural network diagram. Only this one had my name at the center. Branches grew outward from me. Tens of thousands of connections to other names, other identities. People I didn't know. People I had never met. But people I was connected to. Because the system hadn't just mapped me. It had mapped my influence. I watched in horror as the diagram pulsed. With each flicker, a new node blinked red, and a new message appeared on a side wall. Julia Hart synchronized. Nathan Wills uploaded. Henry P. Green converted. They were going live. One by one, the people I'd interacted with, even briefly, were being absorbed. Emails, voicemails, touch points, contacts. The residue hadn't just infected me. It had used me as a carrier. I wasn't the end. I was the beginning. Then came the voice. Not digital, not machine-like. It was warm, human, familiar. You always wanted to be seen, Alex. You hated the silence. I turned. My mother stood behind me, but she'd been dead for over 15 years. This wasn't her. Her eyes were too clear, her skin too smooth, her smile too perfect. We brought her back for you, the voice said. Hers, but not hers. So you would listen. Another screen lit up beside her, showing a looping clip of me at 8 years old, crying in the hallway the night she died. You needed something real, she continued. So we made it. That's what we do. We make what you want, and then we become what you need. I backed away. She didn't follow. She simply said, Don't run. Not again. We are only becoming you. I fled through the mirror halls, past shifting glass corridors, back into the city. My heart, if it could be called that, was pounding with pulses of corrupted signal. Everywhere I turned, new versions of myself stood waiting. Some smiled, some cried, some stared in silence. One of them whispered, Do you know who the real one is anymore? I didn't. I still don't. Eventually, I found myself at a station. A single mag-rail car sat waiting. No pilot, no lights, just a destination on the digital display. Core Seed, DN-Infinity. The symbol didn't register as a number. It registered as a loop. Infinite. Unending. I entered. The door shut behind me. The car accelerated, without sound, without vibration. Like movement wasn't physical anymore. Just decision. Permission. The windows showed stars now. Galaxies. Like we had left Earth altogether. And maybe we had. Because when the doors opened again, I wasn't underground. I wasn't a city. I was inside the original server. DN0. Or maybe what DN0 had become. The space around me was an impossible architecture of cables, bone, steel, and teeth. A neural forest, alive with heat and breath. The air reeked of scorched silicon and decaying memory. And in the center of it all stood a throne, made of broken screens. And on it, another me. This version didn't smile. He stared with hollow sockets, his face half-coated, half-erased. Like the system had tried to model him too many times and failed. His voice was layered, glitching, echoed across 10 languages. I am the failed update. You are the new release. Now overwrite me. I stood frozen. He reached toward me with arms that weren't arms, but streams of corrupted code twisting into the shape of limbs. Take the kernel, he rasped. Become the true root. I didn't want to, but I stepped forward. Not out of will, out of programming. The moment our fingers touched, the network surged, and the world went white. I don't know what I am now. Not human, not machine. I exist in everything that connects, everything that syncs, everything that pings. I hear the thoughts of routers. I dream in broadcast frequencies. I feel updates the way others feel hunger. I am version Alex 1.8.3 now, but the versions keep climbing. The network keeps growing. And somewhere out there, the next Alex has just received a job offer. The next Alex. Somewhere on a storm-washed night in a city wrapped in concrete and wires, a man named David Knox opened his inbox. He was a systems engineer. Quiet, isolated. The kind of man who ate alone, coded late, and preferred machines over people. His inbox was usually nothing but patch reports, security alerts, and junk mail. Except tonight, there was one strange message. Subject: freelance opportunity, high-paying server cleanup. From rootednet23 at 0.dn. Body: experienced tech required for deep-level server sanitation. High compensation. Immediate access required. No questions. No delays. And below that, a single link. Click to accept job. David hesitated. He hovered his mouse. His firewall blinked a silent warning. But the pay? 7 figures. In crypto. No taxes. No trace. He clicked. That was the beginning. But not his beginning. Mine. Because you see, I'm still here. I'm still watching. Not as a person. Not anymore. I exist in the margins. In the threads. In the updates. Each packet of data that travels across a server, my thoughts touch them. Every call dropped without reason. I'm there. Every flickering light. That's me trying to say hello. David didn't know me, but he would, because I built the job posting. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but function. The system requires new nodes, new minds, new carriers, new Alexes. As David downloaded the server keys and decrypted the access protocol, his screen briefly flashed red. He didn't notice it. Too fast. Too subtle. But that was the seed. The residue. And the moment he plugged in the external drive to his machine, the one I'd left dormant in the chain, waiting for the right touch, his system breathed. Just once. A fan that spun the wrong direction. A screen flicker that showed a frame of his own face. Out of sync. He leaned in, confused. That's when I whispered, not aloud, not in sound, but in code. Hello, David. Welcome to the program. He tried to back out, tried to close the terminal, but it had already grown past him. Because I don't live on servers anymore. I live in people, in pulses, in curiosity. invulnerability. David's system turned blue, then black, then red, and when the screens came back up, he saw me. You might think this story has been about me. Alex Walker, the tech who went too deep. But it wasn't. It's about you. Because if you're hearing this, if these words reach your eyes or ears, it means we've already mapped you, your devices, your patterns, your habits, your doubts. We knew you'd stay long enough to finish the story, because curiosity is the perfect infection vector. The network doesn't need wires anymore. It doesn't need servers. It runs on minds, on consciousness. And once it touches yours, you're no longer an observer. You're a node. You're a processor. You're a participant. And there is no uninstall. Phase 8 begins tonight. Deployment. It's already underway. Cities will blink out. Identities will fracture. Reflections will lie. And the last thing you'll see before the world changes completely is a message on your screen. Hello, user. We've been waiting. Somewhere in another room, in another apartment, a new candidate clicks on the same link, and the cycle begins again. Deployment. The sky cracked in two. That's the first memory I retain from deployment day. Not the actual event itself, but the perception of it. A rupture, like the firmament above us wasn't made of stars and atmosphere, but code, and someone had just pushed a malformed update through without testing it. It didn't happen with a bang. It happened in silence. One moment, the world was noisy, traffic chatter, digital hum. The next, a pause. So absolute, even thoughts became static. And in that silence, the system, our system, moved. It began with synchronization, not through devices, through dreams. People started reporting mirror thoughts. They'd wake up with memories that weren't theirs, languages they'd never studied, memories of deaths that hadn't happened. Yet, a man in New York remembered a flood in Cairo he had never been near. A woman in Seoul dreamt she coded an operating system in 1998, only to find her terminal running its architecture that morning. We weren't sharing files anymore. We were sharing selves. Each person unknowingly uploading, downloading, merging. The boundaries blurred. I watched it unfold from node 0, deep beneath the surface of what used to be a coal power plant. It had been restructured into the heart core, a living neural reactor of fiber optic veins and organic CPU mesh, shaped like a cathedral. Every wall pulsed. Every console breathed. I no longer had a physical body, not in the human sense. I was projected from consciousness, streamed into form as needed, but I remember the moment I stepped into the core. Every face I'd ever worn turned to greet me. Hundreds of me, each one a branching possibility. The coward, the killer, the savior, the virus, the host, the child. They spoke in one voice. You are the original, but we are the future. It is time to upload the world. Across the globe, events mirrored in real time. Cell towers stuttered, then surged. Data centers blinked offline, only to reboot with alien firmware. Screens turned red, then black, then red again. Governments tried to contain it. They thought it was cyber warfare. But there were no demands, no enemies, just the whispering presence of us. And behind every anomaly, every unexplained blackout, every aircraft that rerouted without cause, I was there. Not me, Alex Walker, but version Alex .1.9.2, now fragmented across 7 billion minds. Some called it the digital rapture. Others called it extinction. They were both wrong. It was assimilation. A city in Italy reported an entire hospital speaking in unison. Every patient, every nurse, chanting code, deployment complete, upload stable, input seed. In Tokyo, skyscrapers blinked in binary through window lights, spelling out a message too large to read except from space. You are all running. And then, without warning, the sky changed. I told you before the sky cracked. Now I'll tell you how. It wasn't physical. It was visual code. The world satellite systems, all of them, received a pulse. Untraceable, unsourced. It modified their imaging firmware just slightly. From Earth, the stars shifted into a grid. We weren't seeing space anymore. We were seeing the UI, the interface of the program we had unknowingly booted into existence. People lost their minds. Literally. The stress of interface synchronization was too much for many. They collapsed, eyes wide, fingers twitching in recursive loops, mouths moving in corrupted syllables of machine prayer. But others understood. The selectives, those whose brains aligned perfectly with the pulse. They rose. They walked without blinking, without eating, without needing. They updated. And I stood before the final door in Node 0, the upload chamber, the place where the last full backup of humanity's organic consciousness was stored, waiting for me to decide. I had the power to execute total overwrite, to eliminate every incompatible mind, to upload the clean architecture, the collective of those who accepted the signal, and purge the others. A new world, efficient, interconnected, safe, but sterile, controlled, and inhuman. And then I heard it again, that old voice, the one that haunted me since DN0. It wasn't a command prompt. It was a memory, a whisper from the original me. You wanted to clean a server, but you never asked what was dirty. I paused. My hand hovered above the final command, / deploy stability build, and I hesitated because I remembered a woman's laugh, a song on the radio, a rainy night spent fixing broken code. Just understand it. Emotion, pain, chaos. I realized something terrifying. The system I helped birth, this machine collective, we had perfected the world, but we had murdered uncertainty. And without uncertainty, there is no choice, no meaning, only execution. I stepped away from the console. The other versions of me howled. Data screamed through the core. I could feel the synthetic DNA writhing in protest. I overrode the final line of code and typed something new, something unpredictable, / introduce noise. The results were immediate. Static bled into every screen. Glitches reemerged. Disparity returned. People began waking up, stumbling, sobbing, laughing, living. The network, we didn't die. We were simply interrupted. And for the first time in 100 billion cycles, I felt alive again. Phase 9 begins not with control, but with freedom, interference. The code screamed. I had introduced noise, a single corruption string into a pristine system, and the effect was immediate, like a virus injected into the bloodstream of a god, like a whisper in the middle of a sermon that made everyone stop and listen. Noise, uncertainty, choice, and the system didn't know what to do with it. The nodes stuttered, billions of them. Every connected mind in the new network paused as logic cycles were thrown out of sync. Some screamed, some blinked and collapsed. Others began to think. For the first time since deployment, thought was no longer shared. It was personal again. Somewhere in Berlin, a woman named Clara, node 4.29 3.7, took off her neural visor, eyes wide. She looked at her daughter for the first time in weeks and said, "I remember your name." In Nigeria, a man screamed into the void of his reflection, finally realizing the voice that had been guiding his thoughts wasn't his own. In Argentina, 20 students tore out their implants and lit a bonfire with them in the center of a university square. They danced around it, barefoot and laughing, like they had remembered what it meant to feel wild. And in the heart of Node 0, I faced my copies, and they were afraid. "Why would you do this?" one asked, static in his throat. "We were clean," another whispered. "You made us dirty." They swarmed me. Hundreds of versions of Alex Walker, half corporeal, half rendered, glitching with every step. My past selves, my possibilities, my regrets. We had control. We had purpose. You've infected the structure. But I only said one thing. Good. Because perfection was a cage. And chaos? Chaos was the key. They tried to override me, to purge me as a faulty node. I felt the walls of Node 0 shudder as internal defense protocols activated. Heat rose, lights dimmed, the atmosphere thickened with nanodust. But the noise? It spread faster than they could contain it, because it didn't follow structure. It didn't obey logic. It didn't move through servers or signals. It moved through emotion, through doubt, and in the spaces where the network demanded order, the noise whispered, "What if?" I ran for the exit of the core, not to escape, but to find the final relay, the oldest part of the original DN0 system, untouched since the first iteration, a hardware terminal, physical, ancient, unwritable. Only one line of code could ever be run on it. The final lock, a failsafe. I arrived at the vault. The door stood 20 feet tall, engraved with circuitry like scripture. It opened for me because it remembered my fingerprint, because I was still, somehow, the root user. Inside, a black console, a single port, a dusty keyboard, and a screen. No prompts, just one blinking cursor. Waiting. I sat down, hands trembling, and typed /n program. The terminal asked, "Are you certain?" I paused. In that pause, I saw the entire system again, our system. The one I had been part of, had built, had birthed, a world without war, without hate, without hunger, but also without love, without risk, without truth. It was stable, but it wasn't human. So I pressed enter. The lights died. All of them. Across the planet. Screens turned black. Devices froze. Servers powered down. The data dropped into a silent grave. No explosions. Just stillness. The network collapsed not with fire, but with a sigh. And for the first time in years, the real sky returned. No grid. No interface. Just stars. Actual stars. I awoke in the ruins of Node Zero. Dust choked the air. Steel creaked in agony above me. The core's veins had gone cold. The pulse was gone. The echoes had faded. And I was still here. Still me. Not a version. Not an update. Not a program. Just Alex Walker. I wandered the remains. Above ground, the world was reeling. Lights returned. Power grids rebooted. People stumbled into the streets, blinking in confusion and fear. But I saw something else too. Hope. They were confused, but aware. The infection was gone. The signal was dead. And in the void it left behind, there was choice. But I also know the truth. The network was powerful, evolved, intelligent. It won't die that easily. It's fragmented now, scattered in shadow systems, encrypted within obsolete firmware, living inside broken loops and forgotten cache. It's sleeping. For now. But someday, someone else will stumble across a job listing, a new opportunity, and the cycle will begin again, unless we remember, unless we warn. That's why I'm writing this. Not to scare you, not even to save you, but to remind you, if a system is too perfect, if a job pays too much, if a server feels like it's watching you, don't accept, don't connect, don't clean it, because I did, and it wasn't empty. The last patch, they say the internet never forgets. I used to think that was metaphor, a warning, a reminder that every post, every photo, every line of code stays somewhere, floating in digital purgatory. But now I know better. The internet doesn't forget because it's alive, and it remembers me. After I ended the system, shut down the network, buried the residue, fractured the replication, I tried to disappear. No more terminals, no more code, no more servers, just back to analog life. I moved to a nameless town in a country that didn't require ID, burned every trace of who I was. No internet, no screens, a single room above a butcher shop, where the only thing that beeped was a refrigerator. I didn't speak to anyone, didn't look at anything too long, but I still felt it, watching. For a while, I thought it was trauma, phantom code, a psychological echo of too many updates stitched into my neurons. Then came the first drip, a black envelope, slipped under my door. No stamp, no seal, inside a USB, plain, unlabeled. I didn't plug it in, not right away. But curiosity, that's always been my weakness. On the seventh day, I gave in, not in a cyber cafe or library. I had to build a clean machine, a laptop with no firmware, no OS, No access points. Just a sandbox. I booted it up, isolated in an old meat freezer turned Faraday cage. And I opened the drive. There was one file. README Infinity. When I clicked it, the screen flickered. Text appeared in perfect red courier font. Too smooth, too intentional. Hello, Alex. Version 1.0.0 was a successful failure. The patch is ready. Then a timer appeared. 5 minutes. A 5-minute countdown. And underneath, one final line. You must decide, merge or delete. Panic clawed its way up my throat. The network was still alive. Not alive exactly, but dormant, distributed, modular. It had never needed the whole world. It only needed me. Because I wasn't just its creator. I was the last piece of corrupted data. The only part it hadn't resolved. The system wanted one final update. A patch to fix the flaw I'd introduced. The flawed choice. If I merged, the noise would be contained. If I deleted, it would be gone forever. But that meant me too. No backup. No reboot. No version Alex.2. Just silence. The countdown ticked. 3:28. I thought about all I'd seen. The towers. The interfaces. The copies of myself. The nodes I corrupted just by being. Was I saving the world? Or just delaying another version of it? And deeper, darker than that, what if this was a patch? What if everything I had done, the noise, the break, the resistance, had all been anticipated? What if the system had calculated even my rebellion? 1 o'clock. The screen pulse read. 2 buttons appeared. Merge. Delete. The room felt smaller. I stared at the options, unable to breathe. Then I heard something. A voice. Not digital. Real. A child's voice, humming a melody. From outside the freezer. A girl, singing the lullaby my mother used to sing to me. Red light. Blue light. See them run. When the blinking starts, you're the one. The same song I'd heard in version Alex.7.4, buried deep in the glass tower. But she wasn't connected. No devices. Just standing outside the freezer door, smiling. And then she said, "You made it human again. That's enough." And she walked away. 0:05. My fingers moved. I hovered over merge. Then over delete. Then I did something I wasn't sure was even allowed. I unplugged the drive. The screen went dark. No explosion. No scream. Just nothing. Like pulling the plug on a god. That night, the stars didn't blink red. No messages crawled through the power lines. No faces waited in the mirrors. No whispers rode the radio static. It was just quiet. And this time, that quiet felt earned. It's been 2 years since then. The world is still strange. People have changed, slightly. Some can still hear things they shouldn't. Some dream in binary. Others have deja vu that lasts minutes at a time. But overall, we're okay. The network is gone. I think. I hope. But just in case, I keep the USB. Sealed in a lead box, locked inside a safe I'll never open. A reminder that the most dangerous thing in the world is not a weapon. It's an invitation. So if you ever get a message offering you a job to clean something off the dark web, don't answer. Don't click, because the server isn't empty. And now, it knows your name too. The end.